Second of my videos going over array lists. This video I'm going to look at how array lists work with primitives. So we have here an array list that can hold integer objects, right? Integer objects it's the wrapper integer, the full word with a capital I is the wrapper class that will wrap a int primitive and allow us to put it in array lists. Array lists can only hold references to objects, and primitives are not objects. So the wrapper classes take care of that for us. So this is an array list that will hold integer objects. It's called boxed ints because the process of Java now didn't always do this, but now when you put an int into an integer array list of integers, Java will automatically wrap it in the integer class, in an object of the integer class. So this is called auto boxing. And when it pulls an integer object out of an array list, it will auto unbox it if that's what you ask it to do, which we'll see in just a minute. So that's why I named this array list boxed ints. And again, we have to actually make the array list object, and again we specify the type of object that will be referenced from this array list, and the parentheses are needed because this is actually, when we make this array list, we want the default constructor to be used for the array list class. All right, then we have an array of integer values here, which we're going to use to populate the array list. And we just have a simple integer variable n. And now in the constructor, we're using a for each loop, which I explained in the previous video, so I won't explain it again. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the array list, the array of numbers, and add each of the numbers into the array list. So let's go ahead and do this. And again, let's inspect it. And that integer variable is set to 0 because we didn't give it a value. The array of numbers, we don't need to look at that. We know about that. So let's look at this. This tells us that we have an array list of objects called element data. And the size is 8. And so now let's look at that array list. Now remember, the last time we looked at this, we saw, in the previous video, we saw the words that were stored, the string objects, which were words in this case, that were stored in this array list, this array of objects. So now what do we get? In this case, we see that this array list is of size 10. We're using 8 of those cells. And each cell references an object. Why didn't it do this with strings? Because strings are treated a little differently in both Java and BlueJ. But here, this is actually referencing an integer object. So if I double click on that, here's the integer object, and it has one field, which is of type int, which, not surprisingly, is the integer that this integer object is wrapping. Okay, and if we went through here, we would see that each of these contains the corresponding integer that got pulled over from the array of integers. Okay, cool. So let's uncomment this line. So we want to add 2.3. Well, if you've read the chapter or watched the Stanford video, you know that this is going to cause a problem because 2.3 is a floating point number, and we've said that this array list can only hold objects of the integer type. Now, if our array list was of the double type, this would work just fine, right? Java would auto box this floating point double into its corresponding wrapper class, and would auto unbox it when we got it out. But if I try compiling this, I'm going to get an error saying no suitable method found for add double, right? Because the array list we're trying to add it to is defined to hold integers, integer objects. Okay, so we'll comment that out. Now let's look at the next line. Here we have a case where our int variable n, our primitive int, is set equal to the we ask the box int's array list to use its get method to return what's ever stored in it at position 0. So that should be 3. But remember, that's stored, as we just saw, as an integer object. But here's where auto unboxing will take care of this for us. Java sees that we want to store that integer object in an int, so it automatically unboxes it, pulls the 3 out, and sticks it in this int. And let's just look at that. Oops. And there it is. That was 0 the last time we were here. Now it's 3. So just to show you that auto unboxing works. Okay. Now let's look at this. We can set a particular index position in the array list to we could set it to another integer here, and I could supply an int, which would be automatically boxed, and it would replace a reference to that integer would replace the reference to the integer object that currently is at that index position. But you can also set an index position to null. So that's what we're going to do in this case. And we're just going to test that. And there at the 0 position, that's now null, right? This used to reference, as we saw just a second ago, an integer object that contained 3. But now we've set it to null. So just so that you're aware that you can do that. So that's all I wanted to cover in this video. I hope that it makes a little bit, that your understanding of boxing and auto boxing and unboxing and wrapper classes is a little clearer, and the use of array lists for storing primitives is a little clearer after watching this video. Thanks.